there's an ailment, right, when people fall in love with things, with architectural objects. I don't have that. We live with architecture in space in our everyday lives. Everything from the space between your eyeballs and the mirror and looking at your own face, to the view of a skyline, to the relationship of your family at the dining room table. We typically sleepwalk through these conventions. We don't really think about them twice. What architecture sometimes makes you do is take a pause and think about perhaps there's another way to do that. As I think about the buildings that have meant the most to me and the buildings that ultimately we ended up imagining and some executing, they're ones that really play with perception, with stability, with expectations and conventions, and kind of upend the way we think we understand the world. One of the first times that I understood the city and the power of architecture in New York was Central Park when I was a teenager playing volleyball. I had never really thought about how the city could be an inside-out space, how the wall of buildings around really kind of produced an absence that was really, really beautiful. I still think and marvel about the beauty of that place. And if one was to ask me what's the most incredible piece of architecture in New York, I would say Central Park. Another incredible experience was entering the Statue of Liberty. So there was this great figure of Statue of Liberty on the harbor with all of its symbolic content and patriotism and a sentiment that we feel about that as a landing place for immigrants. First time I went inside, and you see this as an abstraction, right? As an Eiffel structure with a skin that's inside out, and you can no longer detect a figure. And it made me realize that architecture is a kind of special effects machine. That's all we do. And if you think about the Pantheon, well, what is the Pantheon? There's a big hole in the middle of a domed space, and light shaft comes through it and moves through the day, and we connect one building with a universe. It's a pretty powerful idea. Well, the High Line was basically a relic. It was disposed. It was a piece of garbage, really, from industrial culture. The very first time we went to visit, we got into a freight elevator in the meatpacking district, and we went up, and it was clanking, and the doors would rattle open and closed, and then you come up, and nobody had used this for ages, and you come up, and the door pulled open, and you were in this incredibly magical space that you didn't imagine was there. Now, that space was full of hypodermic needles and condoms and old office chairs that were broken, but you could see that there was something otherworldly about it. We realized that along the length of the High Line, just by accident, there was this ecology that was very much shaped by the type of space and the local environmental conditions. So areas that were windswept looked a particular way with certain kinds of grasses. Areas that were sun-drenched, other things grew. And areas that were shady and wet, where there were tall buildings, other things grew, like sumacs and trees or tall weeds. One of the fabulous things is that you can walk, and you can walk a couple of blocks and not have to stop for traffic. There's no red lights and green lights. It just keeps going and going. And if you did nothing else but allow the public to go up that 25 feet, it would be just enough to see this kind of unofficial view of the city. Public and private space. What is it? What defines it? Is it a legal distinction? Is it a cultural distinction? What about being too close to someone, making them uncomfortable? What about a kind of sense of distance that makes you disconnect in a private conversation? It's a threshold. It's that interface where you pass from a municipal space, like a sidewalk, into an institution. That line, that interface between the institution and the city is something that our studio tries to fracture, break down. In this case, we're up against planning from the late 50s and early 60s devoted to a car culture. There was a lot of elitism around this sort of cultural acropolis. Virtually every decision that was made really had to do with breaking Lincoln Center away from the city. Our approach was to democratize that campus, to break down the walls, to turn it inside out, to make good on the publicness of its public spaces. It's just a kind of great thing to be an architect in your own city, to be able to know the city well enough to know like what to do to fix something, and then to see the results as something really positive. It's really remarkable. I really don't care about anybody remembering me. I do care that the work that's left behind still matters, and that it's not so rigid and out of phase with the times that it can't be rethought by other architects. So not prescriptive, but interpretable.